Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 7 o'clock here in the morning, Thursday morning, September the 2nd, and I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I'm just having some coffee and waking up, and the chat room is open here if you'd like to sit in the chat room and you're awake and everything. And I want to continue talking about toxic parents and the critical inner voice this morning, and probably finish that portion of this up. And it's good information for, I'm finding it very helpful for myself just taking a look at it because I've never really looked at it to see what kind of information would have been available out there, right? So I'm finding that there's all kinds of good information out there. And it's interesting to see it actually because some of it, it rings so true to me as a survivor of child abuse, right? So hopefully the information is helpful for you and, even just, having somebody else just to hear someone else's voice and say, I totally relate to that, or I experience sort of the same things too, right? Because obviously so many of us are in the same position and we've been abused, right? So that's the problem, right? There's so many of us out here, right? So I hope the information is helpful, and I'm finding it very, very helpful myself. Helps me to put things in place, where they should be. And we're going to look at this morning. I'm not a therapist, not a counselor. I don't hold any professional certificates in those areas. I'm just a private citizen who pays to do my blog talk shows because, I just thought I wanted to be one more voice, to say that we're not alone and that we can reach out, get some help, we deserve to move forward on our healing journey. We deserve to know that we deserved good life, never deserved that abuse in the first place, right? And quite often, there's just nobody to validate our feelings. There's nobody to validate what happened to us. And so by having someone else to talk to, or just, to listen to who's experienced some of the same types of things, been through the same sort of things or even similar, it's just helpful to see that, that we're not on our own in this, and it's sad because it's just too bad that there was not only just one person who's ever experienced this. That would be great, actually, it's because it's just so sad that, there's so many of us out here, right? I know a lot of survivors, and, I don't ever mention them by name, but a lot of my friends are survivors, and I've known survivors my whole entire life, growing up abused as a child and had a lot of friends who were abused and living in abusive homes and dysfunctional homes. And, it's just something I've been dealing with my whole life. So that's why I wanted to, I feel perfectly comfortable talking about this stuff, and I just wanted to be one more voice to, to say to people, just hold on, and keep looking for whatever's going to work, keep looking for what's going to help us to heal, right? Because I'm on this journey too. So, I'm not, you have to listen at your own discretion, especially survivors, right? Because the information could trigger you. So you want to be feeling safe, you want to be feeling comfortable, when you're listening to shows like these, any type of thing like this, because the information can be triggering, right? So you have to be in a safe place when you're listening to this stuff, and so that you won't hurt yourself or hurt someone else, right? Make sure you're feeling good, and maybe have someone listen to this with you instead of listening on your own, just to make sure that you'll be all right. It's so important. Young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you because there's a lot of adult content on my shows. Topics of abuse and abuse survivor issues are not talked about a whole lot. And, young people, you need to keep yourself safe when you're online. And I think it's a good idea to get into the habit of, letting somebody know what you're doing online, especially when you're listening to this kind of stuff or sitting in chat rooms. And protect yourself at all times, right? Because that's what I do. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And, we're fighting to save children's lives every day. All of us, we're just trying to change this thing to protect children and to help people, to get help, right? To help people to realize, like survivors, that there is help out there to help stop child abuse, to help protect children, the whole thing. So make sure that you keep yourself safe when you're online and have permission to listen to my shows, okay? And then if you have questions, you won't be sitting there wondering, well, how am I going to find this information? Or I've never heard this before, because this is the thing. Not very many people talk about the aftermath of abuse, right? We don't hear too much about it. All we ever hear are the headlines. We see the headlines in the paper coming out about children who have been abused or lost their lives, at the hands of their parents or caregivers. And those headlines, sadly enough, will keep on rolling out until we can change this thing. And there'll be just more and more survivors, right? And it's just sad. We need to stop child abuse, right? But the thing is we don't hear a whole lot about what happens to these children after they, grow up, right? And so many people suffer from all kinds of different things, whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative disorder, emotional problems, anxiety problems, just all kinds of things. And it's not our shame, I'm so glad I started reaching out and realizing, even looking within myself to realize that this shame was put on me. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the abusers and my family, and it belongs to my parents and one of my siblings. So, this abuse was not my fault. So how can I take responsibility for it? I really can't. But I need to learn how to heal and how to move forward and how to have a good life, right, which I deserve, and so do you, and so does everyone, right? So that's the thing. That's not talked about very often. So that's why I just ask young people to have someone listen to the show with you. And that way, if you have questions, they can help you find the answers, right? So I want to look at this article we left off yesterday morning talking about the critical inner voice, which is so interesting to me because I have a critical inner voice, an inner critical voice that just keeps on going and going and going. It's like the Energizer Bunny that we see on TV with the batteries. It just never quits. And I've been listening to this inner voice since I was a child. First, it was my parents, and for real, telling me whatever they were telling me, which I can't tell anybody on the air because it's so foul language. I just don't want to repeat it. But the words that pop into my head that from this old past, verbal psychological abuse is still with me today. And so I think this is really interesting to take a look at this stuff because there are ways that we can help ourselves to move past it. And I've been working on this for a while now on how to change these this critical inner voice of mine, which really, wasn't mine in the first place. It was my mother's, really, mainly. So there's all kinds of good information here on this website that's called Consistent Parenting Advice, www.consistenthparenting-advice.com/toxic-parents.html. And this one section we already started looking at yesterday is called Toxic Parents, the Critical Inner Voice. And, it says, what is the inner critical voice? It is the voice of abuse, of strong verbal abuse within ourselves. This inner voice attacks us, criticizes us, blames us, compares us, shames us and hurts us and makes us feel guilty. It's the voice that's inside of us from the old abuse, right? From the old, whatever it was that we went through. And, we can learn to turn this around, and that's what I like about this website here. They do talk about that. They said that it says, if you received many messages as a child that you were not okay for who you were, then your inner critic will be a strong voice, constantly upbraiding you today in the same way. See, so I can still hear what my mom was telling me, still ringing in my ears, And even today, I'm halfway through 40 and, 45 years old, and I still hear my mother's voice, and the words that she would the names that she would call me and the words that she would say, right, I don't want to say on the air because it's just, foul language. But this is what rings through my head. So I can hear her voice all the time, like especially when I'm feeling a little bit tired or that things aren't going the way that I think they should, and maybe I'm feeling a little bit self-critical. All of a sudden my mom's voice will pop in there and I'll hear, her voice and what she had told me when I was a child, which is, just terrible things, horrible things, right? And all the way through till, really she even told me this stuff as an adult, so it's not like it was just as a child. This was just her way of dealing with people in the family. So, I sort of, even if I feel like I've done something wrong, like at work or in my own personal life, if I feel like there's just something that I could have done better, or that, I made a mistake, and quite often her voice will come in there and I'll hear the same words that she told me when I was a kid. And so, it doesn't bother me now like it used to, and that's the thing. I mean, I've done a lot of work in the last 3.5 years, and really learned how to love myself, and that was a big step. Once I started to learn how to nurture myself and love myself and care about myself, I started to push out that negative stuff that my mom had said. But I can still hear it, and I still, it still rings in there every now and then, what my mom would tell me especially when I was a little kid, because it was so hurtful. And basically now I'm just like, well, I don't have to listen to that voice. I don't have to listen to that. That's not true at all. And so I'm trying to turn it around. And I think that's why I like this portion of this website here, because it talks about how we can do that. So it says positive self-talk. It says if you learn to recognize the self-talk of this critical voice, your inner toxic parent, then you can learn how to turn the sound down and then off altogether, and replace it with a warm, nurturing, and loving voice that tells you of your strengths and triumphs instead. See, and that's really something, because when growing up as in an abusive home, or taking abuse from someone as a child in the like especially a family member or somebody that should have been caring and loving and nurturing, if you didn't get that nurturing and loving voice telling you these lovely things, which children really need to hear, then we have to do that ourselves. We have to replace that bad stuff with warm and nurturing and loving, words about our strengths and triumphs, right? If we never heard that as a child, we have to learn how to replace all that horrible stuff with good stuff, right? And so that's what I've been working on. It says learn to recognize your inner negative voice. Say no to it and replace it with a clear, firm, and consistent voice. It will change your guilty thinking into a place of strength. And so it says we can say no to our inner voice, right? Whatever we're thinking. Like sometimes I'll be this could be happening at any given time, any day, right? I'll be sitting around and I can hear my mother's voice saying, these horrible things to me that she used to say. And what I can do at that time is I can say, that's not true. I don't have to listen to your words. And I can say, I'm a good person. I can turn it around, you know what I mean? And I can say, I am a strong person. I'm going to make it. And, I like myself, or I love myself, things like this, right? And we can start to replace this bad stuff with good stuff, right? And it says by learning how to become consistent and loving with yourself, you will also learn how to be consistent and loving with your own children, right? And vice versa if you have children, or other people in your life. We can learn how to change this stuff, right? To change the way that we feel on the inside, and change this, this critical inner voice to a voice that's nurturing and loving and caring, to ourselves, right? It says, how do I learn to recognize the inner critical voice? We learn how to recognize the inner critic by consciously listening to it and getting to know its patterns. It says mostly it rattles on all on its own steam. And it says, and you just allow it to talk at you. This is what they're saying. It just kind of rattles on, and we just listen to it, right? But imagine the power if you begin to listen to it and decide that you don't like what it says to you. Imagine the power if you can tell it to stop, to shut up, and to listen to you while you argue back. So we can argue back with it. And that's what I do. Every time I hear something that, my mom's inner voice here coming in to berate me or tell me I'm worthless or tell me that I'm stupid, which she quite often did, or, just to shut my mouth, sort of thing like that, I say, no, I don't have to do that. And no, I'm not stupid. I'm smart. And, I can turn it around and I can argue back with it, right? It says your toxic voice will be at its loudest when you are upset by someone, make a mistake, feel confused, embarrassed, or afraid. These would be the situations that would take us back to the feelings that maybe we had as a child and around our abuser, whoever the abuser was. And that's when that voice would come in, that inner critical voice, right? So it says, so it is so necessary for you to recognize when you are feeling upset, anxious, confused, and afraid. And then it says, acknowledging that you are feeling these feelings means that your inner critic will start to talk. So it is important that you tune into your negative feelings rather than just dismiss them, because otherwise we just keep pushing it down and nothing changes. Just stay that way, right? It says recognize them as important signposts to your inner voice and then learn how to answer back. So it says once you have learned to identify the feelings and listen to that inner voice, you need to learn how to answer it by arguing back. So I think this is great. I really do. Because as a child, quite often we're not allowed to argue back. It's like smart, that whole, don't back talk me type of thing, right? Parents, quite often, especially abusive, caregivers or parents, will not let a child speak up, especially if they're being abused, right? They're not allowed to say anything, or there's just more abuse, whether it's verbal or emotional, psychological, physical, right? Sexual, it doesn't matter. If a child, is being abused, they're not going to be allowed to stick up for themselves, and a lot of people just out of parents want respect, so they're like, you shut your mouth, I'm not listening to that. So the kid never ever gets to sit to voice what their feelings on the situation, right? And I think parents, really, I don't think they do. It's not a good idea to do that. You want to let your children know that you do care about them, and that if they want to sit down and talk to you respectfully, that you'll talk back. You'll talk to them respectfully. There has to be respect and boundaries and whatnot set there, right? But if parents are just abusive and the kid, is trying to protect themselves, right? Quite often they'll just be punished more. So it says, thinking of that voice as the enemy makes it easier for you to argue with it. Denouncing its messages and laughing at it are other ways to argue against it. So talking back was something you would have been punished for as a child, so it can be difficult to give yourself permission to do it at the start. However, you will be amazed at what a pleasure it can become too. So that's the thing, talking back to our own inner critical voice. It's like, no, I don't have to listen to this, Think of quick, short, sharp phrases to use that disarm your inner critic. So it says one is to call it a liar, another is just to yell, shut up, to our inner voice, right? A very productive method is to think of the opposite and say that instead. Like if your inner voice says you're hopeless, then it becomes I can and I will. So I love that, because if your inner voice says you're stupid, then you can say I'm smart. I don't have to listen to that. I'm smart. And just keep turning it around, keep arguing with it, because that sort of negates the whole negativity of the stuff and puts positive stuff in there, positive affirmations and positive ways to look at this stuff, right? So these are powerful ways of disarming your inner critic, even though you are doing all the yelling inside your own head. So this is just an example. Like it says here, Julie told me that her mother's favorite phrase to her as a child was, "You'll never amount to anything if you carry on like that," quote unquote. And lots of kids hear this, and I know that, I did. So lots of children will hear this from their parents or caregivers or even siblings. It says this phrase sat in her mind as a cruel inner critic. And when Julie began to talk back to it with "just you wait, I'll show you," that was, her inner voice saying back to it, right? She explained that it became her catch cry, her war song even, as she rode into battle. Within a short period of time, it had turned her life around, because she said, "Just you wait, I'll show you that I can do it, that I can make it," right? So that's the thing. We need to turn this stuff around. We need to nurture ourselves, and if we didn't get that nurturing as a child, and we didn't get that encouragement, or all the stuff that children need to hear, to help them to grow, their confidence, and to gain, confidence, a sense of self-worth. And, abused children quite often just do not get that. And we, as survivors, know this, right? And so we need to do this for ourselves, right? It says powerful change can happen. It says it takes awareness, willingness, determination, and courage. It says you are not to blame for what happened to you as a child, but you can do something about it now. It says one of the most effective ways of breaking the cycle is to make the commitment to be more emotionally available to your children than your parents were to you. So that's if you have children. And also just to make a commitment to be more emotionally available to ourselves. That's very important. That's what I'm doing, and that's why, working on my healing journey, I've made quite a lot of progress, in the last 3.5 years, just because I made myself emotionally available for myself. And it takes time to work through this stuff, And it just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I don't know, maybe for some people it does. And I think that, that'd be great, if I ran into somebody that said, yeah, it happened overnight, just like that. I was healed. I'd be like, well, good for you, because that's awesome. But for most people, I know that that's just not the case. So we have to really work at it and just keep going and keep looking for what's going to help and what's going to, to work, because everybody's different. We all experience different things, and we all need different things as far as, what's going to help us heal, what's going to help us feel better, right? So we have to just keep looking for that, keep reaching out, keep looking for it. It says we all need to someone to support us as we make changes in our thinking, especially as we identify and acknowledge the pain of toxic parents. So that's it. Get some support, get some help, right? So I challenge you to find someone supportive to share the story of your inner critic with, and to help you to identify it and to ask for their support as you make the changes. And so this is what they've said here. So that's just it. We have to find someone, to help us get through this stuff, right? And I like group support myself, just because I like the whole safety and numbers thing. And I was just brainwashed as a child to not trust anybody, and especially not to trust people who could help us, right? Anybody who could help us, that's who we did. My parents had told us that we shouldn't be trusting, like doctors and counselors, police officers, just anybody who could possibly help us. That's who my parents would be like, they'll just hurt you. They'll just hurt us. And my parents were very good at, but they were psychologically sick, and they were mentally sick, and they were emotionally sick, right? So they warped us, right? And so, for me, it's the whole group support thing, thinking, well, there's a little bit more safety in numbers, I don't want to get isolated off by one person, you know what I mean, because then they might use my information and hurt me with it. That's what my parents were always saying, and my parents were just, very paranoid people, right? So it was horrible, right? So now I'm learning that, hey, I can trust people, and maybe you can't trust everybody, but if you're not willing to try to trust anyone, we won't get very far. But we have to be very careful, and we have to be very much in charge of our healing journey. And I've seen this on too many websites, especially like Help Guide, and that's one, http://helpguide.org. That's a really good website. Also, the Child Abuse Survivor Monument. Michael C. Irving is a psychotherapist. He's a sculptor. He's a survivor of child abuse himself. He has a website, and you can go to his regular website, which is www.irvingstudios.com, or you can just type into your browser Child Abuse Survivor Monument, and it will bring up the websites, right? And he's got all kinds of information on there about, for adult survivors of child abuse and all kinds of stuff. It's a great website. And, like so many good websites out there say that we have to be, responsible, really, and in charge of our healing journey. So it's up to us, right? We need to be in charge, because it's our healing journey. It's our life. It's my life. It's my heart. It's my wounds. It's my pain. And it's my possibility of having a good life. That's all at stake here. You know what I mean? So I can't leave it up to somebody else to do this for me. I have to do it, and I have to be in charge of it. And so, I think when we go out, if I go out and search for a counselor, let's say in the future, or therapist or whatever, find out if I actually need therapy, talk to a counselor first, and go through a few things, whatever seems to be the best thing to do. And if it turns out that I need therapy, well, if I find a therapist and we're just not working well together, and they don't seem to be able to help me, and we're just not clicking, then I'll have to look for another one. They said, be very much in charge of your healing journey, because not all therapists are going to relate to every single patient, and it's not their fault. They're people too. And some therapists actually specialize in many different things, and that's why, some therapists might just specialize in one type of thing, like child sexual abuse. Some others might just are really more more focused on the situations that would surround emotional abuse, right? So they wouldn't necessarily be able to help someone who was abused sexually as a child. So we have to be very specific and very much, aware of what we need, and so that's why it's a good idea to sit down and think about this stuff, talk to some people, and especially licensed counselors, licensed therapists, right? And that's what I'll be doing, looking for their license and making sure that they are, who they say they are, and, get some help, right, no matter what it is. But I like the group support, online group support, because I can go in when I want to. It's online. I don't have to leave if I'm busy, I don't have to stop what I'm doing and leave my apartment. But, I know for some people that wouldn't be very good, and they wouldn't like that. They would want the more one-on-one, or they would want more of a face-to-face setting, right? For me, I don't necessarily need that. I just need support and validation and someone to talk to, right? Because sometimes, we're just having a bad day and we just need someone to talk to. We can say, yeah, I've had a hard day, it's been kind of tough, and I just have had a lot of flashbacks, and people say, yeah, that's, you just keep going. It's just that encouragement, if we're not getting encouragement within our own families, which quite often, abuse, I mean, it's obvious that people who grow up abused quite often, if they were a single child or if there was, removed from the home and then, lost touch with the other siblings, there's not going to be any family members that are going to be available to help people. And quite often, like in my case, our family was so dysfunctional and still is that we don't even talk about this stuff because it's too painful. It brings up too many memories and we all have different feelings on it. So, it doesn't do it's not healing, it's not helpful to talk to our, my siblings about it because they all feel differently about it. So it doesn't help me because they don't care that my mother smashed my head in or beat the crap out of me or called me names or burnt me or, treated me like such a piece of garbage. They just don't care, right? And flat out they don't care. And that's obvious, right? So it doesn't do me any good to try to seek comfort from them. So I have to go out. I have to go outward from my family and look for that support. So, I thought group support, I really liked that because I got to meet a lot of awesome people who are on their journey as well, right? So it's just so important that we do. So these websites are awesome, and I hope that you will take a look at it, www.consistent-parenting-advice.com. /toxic-parents.html. They have all kinds of good stuff here. What is a toxic parent? Which we already went over this stuff, right? There's Toxic Parents book, which was written by Susan Forward, PhD. Healing the Shame That Binds You, written by John Bradshaw. And Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. And we kind of covered all this stuff this last few weeks. And next I want to look at the inner child. I haven't done a whole lot of looking at any information regarding the inner child. And I've heard this for years, people talking about the inner child, the wounded inner child, right? And I just didn't really, I knew I had an inner child in there, and she was really angry and really raging and very upset and, unconsolable for many years. And it's sad. I didn't really know how to reach out to that inner child, and I didn't even know that I was supposed to. I just thought that I would just, that eventually that feelings would just go away and this inner child would just go away. You know what I mean? It just didn't occur to me that I was supposed to sit down and learn who she is and help her and nurture her. That's what she needed. That's my small self who, when I was a child did not get what I needed from my parents, and especially my mom, that nurturing, that bond, between mother and daughter, and that caring and that concern and the hugs and the love and the kisses on the forehead and I love you, daughter, and I love you, my baby girl. I never heard any of that, and I was quite often just told off and you're a piece of this and you're an effing this, and that's what I grew up listening to. So I didn't get that nurturing right when I was a little kid, so I have a hard time when people come up to hug me now. I actually don't mind people touching me so much now, but I just don't feel comfortable with people coming up and touching me, right? Because it's built into me, you know what I mean, that from being a child, being abused physically, that I don't necessarily, and also being pushed away and not hugged. There's that whole gamut of stuff there that my inner child, I didn't even know I was supposed to be reaching out to her inside of me to hug her, to hold her, and to give her what she didn't get as a child, right? I have to become my own nurturing parent, right? And so, because nobody really can do that for me, I have to do that myself. And that's learning how to love myself, how to love that inner child, that wounded little person that I was, right? And that, needs that love and needs that care, right? So I want to take a look at the inner child, and we're gonna look at that tomorrow and then continue on next week. So take care, everybody. We have about a minute left. Just make sure that you keep reaching out. Never give up. Never ever give up. I wish that my brothers would have been able to never give up. But two of my brothers gave up, and it's so sad to see that. Within our own families and within our own lives and friends and whatnot who give up and they just for whatever reason cannot hold on. And what I'm just asking you to do is ever give up and make sure you call someone. If you can't cope and you're just finding that you just can't get along in this world and you're just not doing well, pick up the phone, call a crisis line. That's what those people are there for, and that's what they're like you and me. Most of them probably survivors, or they just want to help people so badly. So that's what they're there for. They're sitting there waiting for people to call, and they're hoping and praying that you will call. So if you get to the point where you can't handle it anymore, you make a phone call and you call a crisis line and get some help, right? Don't suffer in silence and suffer on your own and feel like it's not worth it, because it is worth it. And I'm telling you, you are worth it. We do count and we do matter, and that, we did not deserve what happened to us, and we deserve to have a good life, and we have to be the ones to go out and to reach our hands out, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times people will not reach their hands out to us, so we have to be the ones to do that. So make sure you reach out, and make a phone call if you have to, talk to someone, get some help, right? Make sure you get some help. And so we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. I'll be back on One Child Abuse Survivor to another 6 o'clock a.m. To 6 o'clock a.m. tomorrow morning. So thanks, everybody. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll be keeping you in my heart. Bye-bye.